And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. WeatherBrains episode number 546, the pre-show, that magical time of this program where we pour out our heart and our soul by sharing boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally we say outrageous things. So it's a Tuesday night special. And by the way, you know, the first week in August I'm gone, so we got to figure that one out too.
You're always gone, yeah.
Oh yeah, I've not had a week off since Christmas.
It'd be nice if we actually worked
every year.
once in a while.
Yeah, I'll take a week. I'll take a week in June, a week in August, and a week at Christmas. It's just
He's so unpredictable.
I know.
I don't know what we're gonna do with him.
Yeah,
I know.
I'll take these screwball trips occasionally, but that's typically not interfering with WeatherBrains. Like,
I retired from the weather service so I could have weekends. Ha!
Yeah, ho 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 ho. So I'm trying to think, what's the next goofball trip I've got here? So our intern wants me to come up to Valparaiso. Let's see, next year, next April.
Megan won't let the intern even work with me.
Her name is Elise, and
I met her once.
She wants me to go to Valparaiso and speak at the Great Lakes Meteorology Conference.
All right, you need a driver? I'll be glad to drive.
Man, I ain't driving that stretch.
Oh, that'd be a great road trip. Just think what fun we could have. Just think what trouble we could get into.
We are here.
Come up to Wichita in August.
Wichita?
What's going on in Wichita?
I got a wedding, but I'll be there.
Oh.
What? Huh? What?
You're going to get married again?
No. I'm in a wedding.
Well, you said you have a wedding. I thought you were getting married again.
Not my wedding.
Oh.
So Aubrey, are you coming to Norfolk for Saturday for the Weatherfest? Because I need to know if we're going to have a WeatherBrains booth on Saturday.
I don't think on Saturday.
Come on now. You told me you were coming. I made my reservations because you said you were going to be there.
Did I say Saturday? I'll have to check with Laura. I still need to figure out what if I can only go on Sunday or if I can do Sunday, Monday too. But we might be there Saturday.
Well, come on Friday night so you can do the WeatherBrains booth on Saturday.
I can't do Friday night. If I leave, it would have to because I'll have to work Friday night.
Just drive all night.
Don't look at me like that, Bill. You're giving me that look.
Well, my screen is looking at something else, so it's not you, unfortunately. I'm trying to get all these crazy guests into the show.
I can't. We have so many weddings this year. I'm afraid I'm going to get yelled at for taking all this time off.
Tell them it's critical.
I know.
Your uncle from Birmingham is going to be on his deathbed over there.
You mean my handsome, younger-looking brother?
Oh, that too.
Yeah. More like your cousin Eddie.
I do respond to handsome quite well there, Aubrey.
Oh, Lord.
So, Kevin.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you lately. What's on your mind?
I know. I was off, and then I was off, and then I think I was off, and then I was sick, and then I was off. I don't know.
You've been off.
How are you guys?
No more vacation the rest of this year, and you got to return the WeatherBrains Learjet.
I have like 2 weeks of severe weather comp time stored up. So.
You get comp time? What?
For severe weather? Yeah, man. We had a lot of weekend stuff.
So wait a minute. I've been doing this for like 35 years.
You can retire now, James.
I'm taking the next 10 years off.
If I work an extra day, especially on the weekends, I get a day off.
Wow.
Ooh, span. You could clean up.
My contract, I'm going to have you negotiate there, Kevin.
Can you guys 20%. Hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Sheldon.
Okay, this is all new to me, so.
It's new to us, too.
Yeah,
we've only been doing it for 11 years.
Oh, okay.
Hey, by the way, James, did you hear the news?
What news would that be?
One of our competitors is adding another meteorologist.
Which one?
The station on the hill, Fox 6.
They're all on the hill.
Say every station in town's on the hill except us.
Except us, yes.
Even I know that.
Yes, but they don't have foxes and raccoons.
Hello.
They actually do. We had a
Spencer.
raccoon. Raccoon at Channel 6 that would eat fried chicken. The ones here eat cat food. I mean,
but they do
have
like
a
to
rat.
steal it.
About 2 weeks ago, I sat in. Was it during the show? No, I sat in here 2 weeks ago, and they'd seen a rat. In fact, it came through the weather office, and I sat in here in the evening for about an hour and a half listening to this crinkling sound because they put down some sticky stuff with, I assume, poison. So I listened for an hour and a half while the little things tried to struggle ever weaker to try and get away from whatever it was stuck to. It was pretty depressing.
Ugh.
Spencer, how are you, man?
After that story.
Good. Hi, Kevin.
You must be tired up there. Y'all aren't used to this kind of stuff.
No, we don't do what you guys do.
Just pound. Well, but it's tiring for everybody. But just pound, pound, pound.
Yeah. We had
How
some
many
more
tornado?
today.
How many? You've had 2 big tornado days in the last 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean we average 2 tornado days a year.
Every decade.
So we've had them. We're done, and we don't have any more now coming our way. No. Yeah, we've been busy. We had 2. We had an EF2 and an EF0 yesterday.
Wow.
In West Virginia. That's pretty big. And Kentucky. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Spencer. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
hey guys, I'm going to reboot this charter modem before we start. I'll be right back. If I go away, I'll come right back.
Cool. Okay. Which one makes me a lower third, Kevin? I'm looking at my Hangout toolbox.
The little cameo-looking thing, Spencer. On
The head with a circle.
Ah, there we go.
Nobody
Mine
knows
doesn't
what
work.
cameo is anymore.
I know what a cameo is, but then I'm old, so.
Oh, mine works now.
Yeah, mine didn't work last week.
Yeah, it's kind of random, Kevin.
Can you guys hear me too? It's Mike.
Yeah, hey, Mike.
From Charleston.
Looking good there.
Thank you very much. You got audio, you got video, no problems
Yeah, using that big weather service pipe, huh?
here? Yeah, something like that. We'll go with that.
The 1200 baud modem.
Yes.
All right, let's see.
Morgan.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
The best pipes in radio or television.
I'm just going off of a headset tonight, and I just finished the 6 o'clock show. I'm going to have to, I've got a producer who needs to talk to me for a second, so I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. So I'll be right back.
Gotcha.
Come on in.
The coffee is here. All right.
Yeah, all my snacks and my welcome hug and
room service too. That's great.
Straight back from basketball camp.
Oh, that's great.
And my drumstick. I have my ice cream cone to eat.
Man, living right.
We must have a full house tonight. I'm glad now that
It is.
one of our guests bugged out at the last minute. We might have had to have abbreviated the panelists.
Hey, Aubrey.
Hang on.
Is that Brian changing his voice again?
No.
Aubrey, do you... Oh, she went away.
Oh, we got a full house here tonight. Wow.
Yeah, we sure do.
Can't fit these many people.
So whenever we have this many people on, just a reminder, most people listen to the show, so if you can, just mute it. If you got to sneeze or burp or make some strange bodily noises or bang on your mic or eat Cheetos or whatever, because I can mute you, but it's still harder on me to do that. So if that would be greatly helpful. Our audio listeners will appreciate that.
Plus, that's the ultimate insult when you get muted by the host.
Yeah, trust me, I will mute you in a heartbeat if I hear some funky stuff coming down the line, because those the audio listeners, they send the hate mail to me. They don't know you guys.
It's the WeatherBrains equivalent of timeout.
Yeah. Well,
now that you're verified on Twitter, James, that's...
You finally are verified?
He's hoity-toity, got the blue check.
It took this long?
I never gave these people the information that they wanted, but I think they just did it anyway. So.
Well, it's just your Social Security number and all your bank accounts.
Yeah, this just wasn't happening. I could not do what they wanted for a long time, so it's like a standoff. All right, so here we go. We're going to radio silence. Let's get the recorders going here. Number 1 and number 2, and here we go. Hang on, let me be sure the TV people are up. It looks like they're, I think they're up. 546. This is 546. All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains, the weekly show that is all about weather. WeatherBrains episode number 546 for the 5th day of July, 2016. We are getting into the dog days of summer. Hey, this is James Spann. Thanks a lot for listening. Got a full house tonight. Looks like everybody's here with the exception of Rick Smith. Rick had a little personal function. He could not make it tonight, but I think he is listening while he is on the road. So, Rick, we miss you. We'll see you next week. But, wow, everybody's here. This is fantastic. I see some good-looking people here, including Aubrey Urbanowitz, who's the best-looking person here.
That's the only good-looking one.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys lie. You're sucking up.
And that's a problem because...
I'll allow it.
Of course you will.
Just this time.
For those that are new, Aubrey is the chief meteorologist at WHSV Television in Harrisonburg, Virginia, one of the loveliest places on the planet. How's the weather?
It's beautiful. It's extremely humid for the Shenandoah Valley. I've got a dew. Oh my goodness! I've got a dew point of 73 now.
Ew.
That is almost unheard of in the Shenandoah Valley.
It is.
Are you tired of being the only female on this group? Do we need another one, or do you prefer to stay the only one?
I'm always welcome to more women, but I think I'm wrangling you guys pretty good right now. So.
She holds her own very well.
I gotta go do a promo. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, that last voice was Kevin Selly, and Kevin, I've had so many requests for this.
Now, WeatherBrains is tracking the tracker. We track what the consultants track, so you can track along with us. Does that make sense? Here's WeatherBrains lead tracker, Kevin Selly.
So you don't do the Tracky Awards anymore. What's the matter with you?
That's lead tracker.
I'll look for one. It's probably time to do it. I feel like I look maybe once or twice a week just because it was interesting. And I feel like maybe we had some impact because I think, I don't know, does anybody else look? I think that the number of dopey tracking tweets has gone down. I think that we had some effect. Anybody want to comment on that?
I saw somebody say something about tracking dry weather and sunshine. I saw somebody tracking sunshine.
Yeah. I didn't say we eliminated them. I think though that we had some impact, and it's a little bit less. At least I'm telling myself that.
Somebody sent me a picture, and I don't have it at my fingertips here, of a station where their chase vehicle. I mean, just in the massive black letters, it says "We track storms." That was all over both sides of this thing. I'm going to dig up that picture. That'll be my nomination.
I know exactly what the station you're talking about. I think it's somewhere as along a state line. Louisiana.
And for those that don't know, the golden pipes of broadcast meteorology, the man with the best voice on the planet, the guy that could make $1 jillion doing movie trailers, yet he follows his passion for science. That's Morgan Palmer. We're going to introduce Morgan in just a minute. But, yeah, Morgan knows the one I'm talking about. Nate Johnson, do you track storms?
Actually, today they tracked us. About 6:15, we're in our commercial break, heading into the C block of the newscast, and all of a sudden, bam! Lightning. Hit the tower outside the back of the building. Knocked out the power for just a moment, fried some stuff up in the equipment room, but our engineers, they were on it. None of our weather gear went down. All the weather machines were up. We lost a couple of KVM pieces, parts, but because our engineering staff was on it, everything was redundant, and we just kept on trucking, baby, because that's what we do at the Big Five.
Speaking of lightning and trucking, we had a guy here this morning in Archer County, which is the county south of Wichita County, and I tweeted this out. There's a couple of pictures. He was driving in his pickup truck and was struck by lightning while driving.
Whoa!
He heard the boom, and the car went dead. And so it slowed down and came to a stop. He couldn't get out right away because he tried to unlock the doors with the electronic lock. That was fried, so he had to manually unlock the door, and then he got out and lifted up the hood and saw smoke. And if you go to my Twitter account, you can see flames in the cabin, and then the firefighters hosing the thing down after it's just nothing but a piece of charcoal.
Goodness gracious, that's scary stuff.
Yeah.
Brian Peters is the internationally beloved meteorologist, longtime morning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service. He gathers those big government retirement checks.
Oh yes, right.
Where do you spend all this money, Brian?
I don't spend it. My wife spends it. I just
make it.
Yeah. I just make it. Filling in for you, by the way, while you're on vacation.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful for your service here, sir. Trust me, if you were not here, we would be hosed. So thank you for working some bad hours.
And I have a question for you. How do you pronounce the name of the super typhoon in the Western Pacific?
Oh, boy.
Our typhoon officer is Morgan Palmer. He's closer. So, Morgan?
Let's see. I posted that earlier today.
I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so I'm curious.
Nepartak? It's Nepartak.
Yeah, I did Nepartak. I don't know. Sounds alien anyway.
All right. Well, Bill Murray, I'll let you introduce our 18 guests here. We have a great show tonight. I sense a good one.
Yeah, James, we've got a great panel tonight. Tonight's show, of course, was suggested by one of our listeners, Scott Whitaker, and it worked out perfectly that we had an opening at the last second, and so we have a big event to talk about. But tonight's guest weather brain number 1 is a show alum. He appeared on show 223. That seems like a lifetime ago, and somehow I think that was on May 4th, 2010, although that seems also weird. But anyway, he's retired from the National Weather Service, so he's also the second person on the panel that's getting those big Weather Service government checks. But he worked for Nessus for years. He authored so many of those satellite interpretation messages and warned us of excessive rainfall and all sorts of crazy things. Sheldon Cusselson, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Bill. I'm glad to be here and to provide my satellite expertise for your show today.
Well, we love that, and we've loved you providing some of that satellite expertise for our blog recently, and keeping us in the know on what's going on. And I liked our discourse this morning when the rain was setting up just to the north of Birmingham, and you wrote and said, this was our best chance for rain in North Alabama, and I said, but not for my house, and you said I should just move my house to the north.
Yeah, that's right.
Believe me, I felt like doing that. When we only got 0.17 of an inch of rain after what looked to be a promising event coming our way. But we're sure glad to have you here tonight.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah.
And our guest weather brain number 2 is a forecaster at the National Weather Service in Charleston, West Virginia. His undergraduate and master's degrees come from Millersville University. He started working for the Weather Service in late winter 2015, and he also loves weather photography. Mike Sharnick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Glad to be here. It was a pretty crazy event here from the local forecast office perspective as well. So, it was one of those events. I'm pretty young in my Weather Service career, and I had never seen anything quite like it so far. Hopefully, I won't ever experience something like it again. But it was. I think we did a good job getting some warnings out there, and be happy to talk about anything you want to talk about as far as the event goes.
We've got a full slate, and we're glad you're here, so thanks for joining us tonight. And somebody who's been doing weather a little bit longer than Mike in Charleston, West Virginia is with us. That's the Chief Meteorologist, WOWK, in Charleston, Spencer Atkins. Welcome to the show, Spencer.
Hey, thank you, Bill. Good to be here with you all. And, Mike and I have been a little busy.
So y'all actually had tornado activity over the holiday weekend, huh?
We did yesterday. Yeah, 4th of July. Nature's fireworks, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was pretty amazing out there. A tornado in the early afternoon hours over there in Kentucky, coming over the coming over the border into West Virginia. That was a pretty long-lived Boeing line segment / supercell. It was a pretty weird little storm, but it produced a lot of damage, that's for sure.
And let me just say, they're all like that here. They don't look like your all's tornadoes, where you all have the nice hook and you can see the vault and the bear cage and all that stuff. And we get on TV and we go, see this big old amoeba? Somewhere in there, we're going to have to start looking at all this stuff and figure out what the tornado part is. And that's exactly what we had to do. That just happens here a lot. They don't look classic in this region.
So did y'all actually have a TDS on that storm I saw?
Yeah, there was actually 2 different occurrences of a TDS yesterday from what I've looked at this evening. I wasn't working yesterday, but I've been sort of catching up on everything that happened. And there was a TDS near Yawkey. We had a confirmed tornado there today. A team went out and surveyed that area. And then we had another one, a very subtle one, just southeast of downtown Charleston. It was sort of in a state forest that a lot of people go hiking in. We haven't really confirmed any damage out of that area. We're going to go down there and take a look tomorrow. But since I've been here, those are only probably the second and third TDSs that I've ever seen. So pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, that is. And, of course, the TDS is a tornado debris signature and a really recent development in dual-pole radar that has been phenomenally helpful to the Weather Service. Talk about that for a second, Mike. How has that sort of changed, issuing tornado warnings and tornado observe tags in the Weather Service?
Yeah, well, coming fresh out of radar training, I was just actually out in Oklahoma a few months ago, and that's something that they're really, really hitting hard right now as far as training the new forecasters. The TDS, it allows us to detect things that aren't water that are floating in the air, perhaps lofted by a tornado or something like that. And when you see that, there's pretty much only one way that can happen, and that would mean that some sort of circulation touched down, either picked up some dust, picked up some tree debris, or perhaps even worse than that, lofted into the air. And we can see that, and we can add extra, sort of descriptive sentences in the warnings that are a little bit more, they get the public to do a little bit more than just, radar has indicated a tornado. Well, you can now say radar has confirmed a tornado, which studies have shown actually led into a little bit more action. So we did one of those yesterday. The radar forecaster on shift did a great job grading the warning from just a regular radar indicated tornado to a tornado confirmed by radar. Because of that TDS, we were pretty confident in the situation. So, it's still developing. There's still a lot of work to be done as far as getting everyone on the same page, but there's a lot of good training going on right now in that, so hopefully we see the fruits of that in the future.
Let me jump in on this, too, because what Mike didn't tell you was the thing was headed right for the National Weather Service office, and we're sitting there watching this thing, and I'm on the air. Mike, we jumped on that even before that thing went tornado, and then what was key to us was when you put the wording out and you said cited. I think we had a confirmation of sighting, and that point, that just doesn't happen here. That's not real normal. So I literally, I'm on the air, and I just said, hey, that's it. We're staying on until this thing isn't a thing anymore, and it was 2 hours. But your wording was big. The second thing was that thing really was headed right for the Doppler radar.
Yep.
And here's the thing, we got a long way to go in getting attention, not only just getting attention around here for tornadoes, because people think the hills protect us from tornadoes. It's what that people tell you. And 2, on a holiday, on the 4th of July, are you kidding me? And it hit a Walmart in Louisa, Kentucky. And I said, let's think about this for just a minute. If you had to find a spot in America, especially kind of a rural setting in America, on the 4th of July where you're going to have some people together and then make it a target for a tornado, it would be a Walmart, for Pete's sake. Yeah. So we were so lucky. EF2 out of that first one, and, thank goodness nothing worse happened than what did. It was just 5 minor injuries.
Yeah, and, there was a lot of other stores and shopping centers. The area between sort of, along 119 there where that TDS sort of was tracking towards, the Southridge Center. It could have been a lot worse, and we're really fortunate that it wasn't.
Absolutely, amen.
So Morgan Palmer,
I have to bring this up. Seems like somebody on Twitter was asking why was there no tornado warning for the and again, you guys correct me if this is not correct. I didn't pay attention to the specific events that day, but he's saying there was no tornado warning for the storm when it hit the Walmart. Is that true?
There was a severe thunderstorm warning that came out a few minutes prior. There was no tornado warning at that time. Another thing that sort of happens around here is these things spin up pretty quickly sometimes. And we were looking at some of the archive radar there today. You could sort of see a circulation forming, maybe a couple thousand feet, 4,000 or 5,000 feet off the ground, 2 scans. That's it before it hit. It was a real quick spin up, but it was pretty strong. So, unfortunately, that one wasn't caught with a tornado warning, just due to the sheer rapidness of how quickly it spun up there. But
it did. It didn't look classic. Didn't have the morphology, but it was something that got us. And Eric Taylor, who works here with me, he looked at me and we're working together. And he kind of kicked me in the leg and he said, "Let's go." And I said, "You know what? Yeah, let's go." So we actually jumped on just before that, and we were telling people, "Let's be careful, be careful." This really, and we don't do that here a whole lot. It's just something that got us, and that we're looking at that rotation. One thing that kind of does bug me a little bit is we actually have some value-added products from the same vendor that went out and redid all the dual pulse stuff. The TV people have some stuff that's probably even a little bit more advanced than what y'all have, and we kind of wish that you had some of that equipment in your hands, like our own TDS type of flavors and varieties. So we were seeing a few things that were in there that were showing us 60-mile-an-hour winds. That's how we jumped on. So that, as a discussion, as an enterprise, I think we got to look at that and say, wait a minute, why do the TV guys have this and the Weather Service doesn't have this?
Yeah.
They bought the light version, Spencer, so they'll have to upgrade to the professional version a little bit later.
Yeah, exactly.
So and I have to stop because I'm remiss because I didn't realize it was in my job description tonight to formally introduce friend of the show Morgan Palmer. Morgan, out there at KIRO in Seattle, you looking dynamite. You don't get too many TDSs in Seattle, do you?
No, we haven't had that many in a long time. In fact, rarely do we ever see something like that on radar. If we do, it's usually sort of geographically, topographically enhanced, or it's often a ghost. The strongest circulations we often get in that sort of scale, there are water spouts that are very, very short-lived, and we certainly don't get much of that right now as we just had our coolest 4th of July in 4 years. I was out there at Gasworks Park over Lake Union as the fireworks went off at about 10:20 last night. It was about 60 degrees and the winds were howling, so it was pretty chilly last night.
Still, Seattle and 60 degrees sounds awfully good when we were 98 here yesterday. So we'll trade you, Morgan. But I've got 6 broadcasters on here, 6 of the top broadcasters in the country. So talk about the use of the impact tags. Like we've already referred to the observe tag. That warning that you referred to, the severe thunderstorm warning, Mike, probably had a tornado possible tag in it. Did it or did it not?
That warning, I believe it did, and all subsequent warnings, even if it wasn't, even if the rotation wasn't, looking quite as strong, we had it in there from there on afterwards, because it certainly was a situation where, given the environment, you could quickly spin something like that up, especially anytime we have a leading edge of a squall line around here. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, we had that sort of remnant of all those tornadoes out in Illinois that sort of formed what was supposed to be a pretty big windstorm, some say derecho. On that leading edge, we had a couple spin-ups that came up on there, and we were using those tags as well. So it's pretty important to have that message out around here. Whether it verifies or not, sometimes you never find out around here. Sometimes a tornado happens in the woods. It's very rural. Spencer knows how the hills and the trees are around here. And if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to see it, it's sometimes run into those situations. But yeah, those tags for tornado possible, we really try to hit those pretty hard around here too.
So James, when Gina Yasko came and talked to the Weather Service and the broadcasters and the emergency folks here in a function back in late May, the point of the discussion was about those tags. Do you pay much attention to them when you're on the air? Or did James maybe off somewhere?
Oh, you mean me, James?
Yeah, you, James.
No. I'll be honest with you. I don't even see the text of the warnings. I don't see the call to action statements. We get those via National Weather Service chat, and we're basically seeing, tornado warning issued for blah, 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 until blah, 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 or maybe even the message before the warning is issued. I think they pay me to handle that. So, no, I don't even look at those statements, and I probably should. But, again, the easiest thing to do is to lie and say, yeah, we look at them and they're great, but I'm so busy. You stand in my shoes out there in a green wall during a tornado outbreak. You have a limited number of brain cells, a limited number of CPU cycles in your head. There's only so many things you can do, and that's just one thing I would rather handle myself.
I saw just this weekend, James, that the average human brain is doing 10 million calculations per second. I wonder what yours is like when you're on the green wall. I bet it's 100 million probably. But Nate Johnson, you're probably a good one to ask. Do you pay attention to the tag?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you've got multiple people you're tag teaming with and you have a chance to delve into the warning text a little bit, then yeah, we'll look at it. But usually the content that we need is in the text of the warning, for us anyway. And on top of that, we've also got the benefit of all the radar data, the value-added products that Spencer talked about, our own viewer reports and things like that. So there's a lot of data assimilation, and generally the Weather Service warning is a lot of times either a confirmation of what we think is going on, or an alarm to say, hey, we missed something. And a lot of times too, we have our Weather Service office here in Raleigh is fantastic. At not only being on top of the warnings game, but also putting a lot of really useful information in the chat. So, for example, they'll say, hey, we're watching this. There was a storm we had a couple of weeks, or last week, I guess, that looked like it was, if you'd have just seen the radar data and nothing else, you'd have thought there has to be an F4 underneath this thing. It was just, it was just smacking you in the face. And one of their forecasters popped on the chat and said, we see the rotation and we're not issuing a warning because the lower level environment is not supportive. And that's what we had thought as well, but having somebody else's eyes on it to confirm, hey, we don't think the environment's really set up, the low level shear isn't here, that sort of thing. And sure enough, it did not produce a tornado. So that sort of two-way communication, and also just an understanding of the environment, so you know what you're going to expect out of a given day's radar signatures. It's not to say that the warnings aren't useful. We take the text of the warnings and some of the guts, and we'll scroll those on the bottom of the screen for viewers. But for the most part, we're there doing color commentary, based on the radar and camera, video and things like that.
Bill,
I'll weigh in, Bill, too.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't like seeing the all caps tornado in the chat that comes in these automated things, because if you catch that out of the corner of your eye, as James said, you're trying to do multiple things, and then it's like, okay, wait, stop down, see what this is. Is it possible? What is it? And so, especially in the chat, I think if anybody's listening or cares, I would prefer maybe not to have it in the format that it's in.
Interesting. That's an interesting comment. What were you going to say, Spencer?
I was just going to say, I think if you talk though to Aubrey and myself up here a little further north, boy, when Mike puts that out in the chat and it says either cited or likely, we really pay attention to that, because again, there's so often that it's false alarm. Even the ones that, like Nate's talking about, that look really good. We had some beautiful hooks lately, and they don't produce anything, but it's always this kind of garbage-looking cells that are the ones that kick off. And if he puts anything in the chat that says, I've got it, I kind of made a joke about it. I said, you all have seen Peyton Manning when he's at the line. You think he's got a beautiful play lined up, and the next thing you know, he starts yelling a bunch of Omaha, and he's waving his hands. That was me on TV last night when Mike put that out, and he said, excited. And I said, hang on just a second, this changes the whole thing. And I'm yelling Omaha and getting everybody. I'm literally producing on the fly. Kill the commercials. We're not doing that. We're going to this studio. We're doing that. And that's how big of an impact it makes here. Now in Alabama, I could see not. And, Wichita Falls, places like that, because y'all get it a lot more than we do. So in terms of that goes. But it's funny because we came into work thinking about floods, and then we turned out to have a tornado day. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, and go back to the flood event for a second, Spencer. Talk about the impact of the big June flood event there in your market.
Yeah, it was terrible, and Sheldon, thank you for the emails, and we read those, we look at those, and we were all kind of on edge for this, and it's hard. The map probably won't show up, but you're talking about 9 inches of rain in the course of 3 or 4 distinct events that come and pour, and you're dealing with real steep, what you call the geologic formation here is dendritic. It's not like just a valley that's really long. If anybody's singing in California, you get the big valley in the middle of the state. This is literally like spider veins when it rains on there, and there are thousands and thousands of basins that can fill up, and the hydrology, just trying to keep up with it, is almost a nightmare. I mean, the maps of the rivers around here would just, I mean, it's just like spider webs. It just goes on and on and on. It's crazy, and you have to try and remember the basins, but they filled up so quick. They're just like bathtubs, and warnings were good, but it's so hard to get people to move. It's night and half of this event. Even in the daytime, it was hard to get people to move, and we lost 23 people, which is it's heartbreaking, and it takes you a while to kind of process that.
It's interesting, Spencer. Probably, going from my recollection and my personal history, growing up in Texas, what happened there is probably very similar to what has happened from time to time in the Texas Hill Country, where you have that limestone that's just right under the surface, and boom, that rain can run off, and we've had incredible, disastrous flash floods. Llano, Texas. I remember Hunt, Texas, where a church group buses got swept away. Right. Yeah. Just some heartbreaking stories. Up here we have so many river basins, and they all have incredible names that sometimes it's hard to keep them straight up here in the Seattle area, but we rarely see the volume of water. All of our flooding up here is so slow, and I guess that's a blessing most often.
Well, this was a series of events, and maybe Mike and Sheldon want to talk about that. This wasn't just one, but even in the afternoon, we started seeing that, okay, the water's coming up, and the warnings are out, but again, once you're dealing with the water and it's near your house, you're probably it's probably a bad thing that you don't want to stop and look at the TV, and the app may be working, it may not be working. It's hard to tell, and I'm in that phase now. This isn't 250 people. This is 23, though, and to me that's still way too many. And when I hear the stories about, water filled up in a senior citizen's home and they drown in their home, how does that happen? How can we not get there? And especially when you're dealing with a series of things, but it does happen that fast. It is a little frustrating, and we gotta keep trying to work. We can't give up on trying to get warnings out and get a better message out. The weather dog.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. There goes
Bear. It shows going to the dogs.
Didn't like your comments there, Spencer, or was in agreement with you probably. So, yeah, Sheldon, we do appreciate those emails you send out, like Spencer talks about. But talk about this event from a large synoptic scale and from the scale of atmospheric rivers.
Let me. Let me see whether I can slide on the screen here. Okay.
This will be Sheldon's slideshow.
Okay. 1980s, we started on GOES satellite images. Started to see GOES water vapor images, and this kind of.
Hey, Sheldon, your audio is right. Are you guys hearing the same audio problems?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're having a hard time hearing you. I'm afraid our audio listeners won't be able to decipher what you're saying. So I don't know if you can double check your microphone there.
Oh, I'm not sure where my microphone is. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you sound better.
Yeah, we see your nose hair now, but we'd rather have your audio clean than your video. That's.
And just.
Well, and it just went away. It's like something that's intermittent. It's almost like there's a loose cable or something there. It's coming and going. So.
Oh, shoot.
I think it's a limiter. I think you have to be closer.
Hey, maybe I should speak a little bit louder. Okay. Before the event occurred, there's many different types of satellite products to take a look at for the event. The one in the lower middle, a soil moisture from NASA, which showed that conditions over West Virginia were already pretty moist. They had a pretty moist May and also June, and the last few days before the event, had some rain as well over West Virginia. So that kind of set the stage for a very wet soil moisture over the state of West Virginia. Then proposed water vapor became available in the 1980s, and it's been very useful at looking at the big picture, moisture picture at the mid and upper levels. And this analysis on the left-hand side showed classic moisture connection, maybe atmospheric moisture connection in the mid and high levels that came from Mexico. Sometimes we call that the Mexican connection. And that moisture was traveling into the Rockies and across the Central Plains and on into the Central Appalachians on the evening of June 23rd. Another satellite product that became available in 2008, 2009 was total atmospheric moisture. And the different lines show the different levels of wind flow that bring various moisture levels. It's in this big.
Hey Sheldon, let me see. Let's try this. Let's see if you can turn your video off. That might help the audio because we're still getting some pretty serious audio problems. There's a little button up there. You can click the video off. We'd rather have the audio than the video, so maybe that'll help conserve bandwidth and make it better.
Let's see here.
And that might not help. I don't know. But again, I'll tell you, they will send me the hate mail based on the bad audio. So
yeah.
The better the audio, the smaller the amount of hate mail I get.
So this total atmospheric moisture analysis just before the event of June 23rd showed area dry air to the north.
Yeah, it's Sheldon. It's still not. I'm sorry. Your video. If you can turn your video off. And maybe, Bill, you can pick up another guest here, and we'll see if we can get Sheldon.
Yeah, we'll get Sheldon straightened out. Mike, talk for a second about the synoptic setup as the flood event occurred.
Well, we had a low pressure system that was sort of up towards the Great Lakes area. The cold front was sort of draped back in the Ohio Valley. One thing that really contributed to this, again, sort of like I mentioned earlier, is we had those thunderstorms come through in the early morning hours, dumped about an inch or two of rainfall sort of along the central West Virginia corridor right there. Again, it produced some severe weather, but the real impact of that ended up being the rain. It saturated the ground. Our flash flood guidance, this is a product that we use to sort of give us an idea of what amount of rain and what interval is going to lead to problems. Some of that guidance was indicating that it would only take about an inch in an hour, maybe an inch and a half in an hour to start to cause some flash flooding. At that point, the topsoil would be saturated, so you would only be seeing runoff after that. And as Spencer knows, a runoff on the hills and the terrain around here shoots straight down right into the creek valleys. You could get really rapid rises, and so that really sort of set the stage there. We had a break in the mid-morning, early afternoon hours, and then what happened is that we had a pretty decent weather event in the afternoon, which was one of our major concerns as well. I think we had about 15 or 16 warnings go out, severe now, not flooding. These quickly turned into training thunderstorms repeated over the same locations. So, the Interstate 79 corridor, Nicholas County, Greenbrier County, they just got, relentlessly ran over several times by some pretty strong thunderstorms. And that really lingered through the afternoon. It was sort of we get these fronts around here in West Virginia, as I'm learning, that in the summertime, they get to our doorstep. We want them to get through, but then they sort of wash out right over top of us. One of our senior forecasters, you may know the name Ken Batty. He's really good at knowing the local area and everything. Spencer knows him, of course. He always talks about this where you get the front, you want to get it through, you want to get that nice refreshing shot of cold air, cooler air behind it. They stall out right over our area, and when they stall out, we often get a lot of moisture that just rises right up against the front. That's sort of what happened all afternoon and evening long. The thunderstorms moved basically west to east. There was no southward component at all for a period of time, and the rain just sort of continued on through the evening, and that's sort of what happened there to lead to the flooding. I don't know if you have anything else to add there, Spencer, from your observations around the area.
Hey, Spencer, you're muted. Sorry.
You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. I took your advice to heart about muting myself earlier, and then I didn't unmute. So these fronts, they do come in and they kind of stall. They'll come across the Ohio River, and the way Ken and I kind of describe it is they'll drag their feet up against the mountains, and they don't want to clear the barrier. I mean, you talk about impressive numbers, though, too. We have a series of dams and some places that are meant to catch the water. And the problem that we had was a lot of the rain fell below the dam. And you can't go out and build a dam as quick as you can fill up these basins. One of them is called Summersville Lake. And that one jumped. Now, the 1,652 feet is what the pool is. That's the elevation. So you're dealing with, if you're trying to measure from sea level, that's how they mark these things. This thing went up 38 feet in 24 hours. And you're talking about a lake that is, it would be as big as a county in some spots. It's huge. So then they had to release that water out, and there was some nervousness about that. We had another smaller dam up right in Greenbrier County, which is in a very high elevation area, and you're talking about 3,500 feet, maybe 4,000 feet in this area. And this dam filled up, and the water started to come over the spillway. And here was an issue when we talk about, Bill, some of the problems with messaging. I think the only message, and Mike, maybe this is true, the message that came out said that there was a dam break. And what it turned out to be was just some water came over the spillway. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between that. And when that first came out, I said, and Buffalo Creek came to mind, and, the Canyon event in Colorado, all this stuff started to come to mind. But then I said, wait a minute, I think that's hard-coded as the message. It's a dam break. I think because I remember a couple other events. So I said, let's confirm that before we go on TV and go crazy with it. And as it turned out, it was just that. So the flooding that occurred in a place called Richwood was not from a dam break upstream. It was just because the rain fell 9 inches down below the dam. So that's the kind of event you're dealing with, and it was a nightmare. The loss is extensive to damage and property. It's incredible just what has happened. The force, we all know the force of water, and it just kept on and would not relent for 4 events in 24 hours, which is where we came up with the 9.5 inches of rain and 9.75 inches of rain. You could live where it's flat and on the sandy beach, and you're still going to flood with that.
Yeah, and to a point that was brought up earlier, and I think this is a good thing to mention. I wanted to get this in. There was some talk about the chat feature, and some people that are watching this, I'm not sure, they may not know what that is, but every Weather Service office has a tool called NWS Chat. It allows the media to get in there and talk to us, bounce ideas back and forth, bounce reports back and forth. Emergency managers can be in there discussing what they're seeing. Law enforcement, pretty much, anyone who's representing some sort of public service can be in this chat and getting feedback from us live in real time. And that's something that some offices use very effectively. We're sort of trying to use it a lot more, and this was probably a pretty good test case for this event, where we're really trying to provide some of that, this is what we're thinking, maybe a quick heads up right before we issue a warning or something like that. I know the media around here is really good about asking us questions, specifically like, have you heard any reports in this area, or if we need reports to try to determine whether we want to issue a warning or continue a warning, we'll put something in there. So I think it's something that I really want to promote. Our office is really trying to promote this. We've had a lot of positive feedback with it. So in your own markets, and for people listening at home that may have some sort of job that details with dealing with the Weather Service, NWS Chat has become a really good tool for us, especially in the past year or so with all the major events we've had. So I know it's a little off topic, but it was something that came up and something that I think would be good to mention.
And I think chat is sort of, I don't know that I like to call it chat. It sort of gives this connotation that it's a bunch of meteorologists in a smoke-filled room having a couple of brewskis and over a chat. It really is a very powerful two-way communication, 3-4-way if you factor in emergency managers and other folks in there. That is, if it's used properly, and that's the key, if it's used well, it can be absolutely invaluable. I remember covering a severe weather event in with a predecessor to NWS Chat. I was out in Abilene, Texas, and we were covering tornadoes on the far western edge of our viewing area in Snyder and Colorado City, and we didn't have any people out that far away yet, and we had storm chasers and spotters working with the Midland office, and I was in the Midland, sort of chat room, getting information that I was able to turn around and communicate to my viewers, folks who were watching me in that area on television. And I remember walking away from that going, I will never cover another tornado warning the same way again. It was really a life-changing experience in terms of how we handle severe weather. And when I hear of offices that, and it really is a two-way thing. The office has got to be a part of it. The media have to be a part of it. The EMs have to be a part of it. There's a balance. You can be obnoxious in there. You can say too much. But by and large, what I find is that when I've popped into others, it's a lot of times it's people aren't saying enough, or it's the Weather Service putting stuff out and then never hearing anything back, which is every bit as dysfunctional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nate, there's an interesting story, and it's sort of we both have experience in the same neck of the woods. My parents live on Lake Cisco, which is not a very big lake. It's in north central Texas, essentially 40, 50 miles east of Abilene. And about a month ago, there was, well, the water had already risen higher than we had ever seen it rise. My parents live on our lake house, which is on a high cliff, so we didn't have any flood damage, but this water rose and went over the spillway of Lake Cisco, which is a dam that was built in 1926. It had not been over the spillway since at least the 1960s. We got our place in 1971, and by far the water had never come that close to being over the spillway. Well, it was coming over the spillway, and then one morning, it was June 2nd or June 3rd, maybe June 4th. I'd have to go back and look, but there was a thunderstorm that sat over the lake. It was a fairly small thunderstorm, just less than 10 by 10, 8 by 8 miles, and it dumped nearly 5 inches of rain in just a few hours. That sent the water over the spillway, and I think I've got a couple of, let's see if I can screen share this. Let's do that. Let's see if I can, are you guys seeing that at all?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the water that was over the spillway. This was actually on June 2nd, so that thunderstorm must have been the afternoon of June 1st, because I'm on the phone with my parents, and then I see on the NWS chat, let me see if I can go to this next image, on the NWS chat, see if I can share this one, and let's see here. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, that's Highway 6, which is the primary lifeline for people getting in and out of Cisco, Texas. The water took it out. That highway's been there for many decades. And again, this dam had not been topped in at least about 50 years. And there was a lot of concern about the dam itself. But, back to, let me put this back. There we go. To this date, and something I want to point out, and two things I want to mention. Just because it has never flooded in an area should not give anyone confidence that it will not flood.
Exactly.
There were dozens of homes, the estimate somewhere around 60 or 70. Fortunately, my family's on a different part of the lake and wasn't damaged. We had some very minor repairs to do, but we were up on a cliff. 60 or 70 homes damaged, and these homes were built on leased lots from the city of Cisco. These homes were built with the assumption that the spillway elevation, and this is important, was 1,520.0 above sea level. Well, the spillway was topped at 1,522.5. 2.5 feet makes a lot of difference when you're talking about vertical elevation. But no one had done a survey in decades. And the last survey that I saw on the Texas Water Development Board website had 1,520 listed as the elevation. So people had actually built their homes right on the water, or right on what you would think would be the lakeside lot that actually were in the lake. And I don't know what litigation is going to come from it. But before you decide near a river, on a lake, near a lake, get a survey. Try to do all you can, and don't assume that because it's never flooded this bad in the history of a lake, nearly 100 years since it was impounded, that it can't happen, because I've seen it firsthand, and it's just amazing, and it's causing a lot of inconvenience even for my folks. A 15-minute run into town now takes about 45 minutes.
Wow.
Each way.
It does bring up a point about building and rebuilding. Well, maybe we can touch on that down the road. But one thing I wanted to touch about this specific event is, and Mike can chime in on this, and there's too much talk about derecho beforehand. Maybe that was fine, and part of the enterprise was talking about that, and that counted for Illinois and Indiana. But when the word gets said here and ingested here, we go back to 2012 when we remember that 75% of our electric grid was gone.
Yep.
So I barely ever say that word. It's like a dirty word, okay? And I'm very cautious about how I say that. And I thought, you know what? And I kept saying, look, people want to say derecho, fine, but please, let's focus on flooding. There's a flash flood watch out for a reason, and I don't want people, and I'm just one guy on one TV station, right? And if the enterprise isn't screaming loud enough around us about, no, we need to watch out for the flooding, then you can get a result like this, because everybody was worried about 4:30 in the morning. We were here 4:30 in the morning. We tracked the storms, 75 mile per hour wind or whatever, coming through. So we did that. But then, we mentioned here, Mike said that was 2 inches of rainfall. So you're going to get tricky. The antecedent conditions, all of a sudden, the ground is filled with water. And then we should have been focusing on that all along. Now, and again, I'm not sitting there patting myself on the back. I'm just saying I'm screaming about that, and I'm getting a sick feeling in my stomach the night before, because everyone's talking derecho, and it's so hard because the word doesn't stop at the state line. But if you say that word here, it's almost traumatizing to people, and it really is. And now we're back in every time it rains, it's almost traumatizing. So I'm having to kind of walk through that. How do we control that word to what it actually means as a tape measure definition, and not you're going to lose your power for 3 weeks in a 100-degree heat for 500 miles?
Yeah, it's almost like a strange culture has been set up around here that I wasn't really completely prepared for when I came down here, that anytime we get any sort of, outlook, or there's a slight risk in effect, I mean, people are aware of these kind of things now in West Virginia. They may not have been before the derecho back in 2012, but it's amazing how many calls we will get the morning of any severe weather event nowadays, and it will be, is there a derecho coming? And we almost have to play sort of, I don't want to say we have to downplay the events, because every event can be serious, but it's a weird line to sort of walk along. In, you want to reduce the panic, you don't want to reduce the hype, you almost want to redirect the attention to the flooding, but you can't get that one experience out of people's brains, because I mean, it was so devastating around here. It's understandable that they'd be worried about it. And one of the things that we were talking about around here is that now, going ahead for the rest of the summer, maybe for the next few years, every time there's some sort of flash flooding, are we going to be dealing with the same thing? Are they going to be saying, is this going to be like, is the Elk River going to crest out of its banks again? The day, it was about 2 days after the big flood on the Elk River on the 23rd. We had another system come through, another front, one of those slow sagging fronts, and we issued a flash flood watch, mostly preventative, just in case something would happen. And again, I haven't worked too long in the Weather Service, but I have never received more calls working our decision support desk than we had that morning. Even more so before the main event that happened 2 days ago, people weren't calling this much. Yeah. It's an interesting social aspect of meteorology. I'm certainly no expert in it. I'd love to learn more about what would happen in the future if we get these events. Are people going to now worry more about flash flooding because that was the latest and greatest disaster? It's an interesting point to think about.
That happened 20 years ago, though, in the same spot in Clendenin, but the difference was this was 10 feet higher, and I can remember where we literally had to fly people out of helicopters in '97, so it can happen.
So Spencer, talk about that for a second, because I worry about those black swan events that we don't know about, that may not have happened yet in our recorded history. Was this an unprecedented flood in many of the areas where where the flooding occurred in West Virginia.
Oh yeah, it was. Now in some spots, let's take a place called Clendenin, which is literally 20 miles north of Charleston, which is amazing that they had 6.5 inches of rain at these events. Charleston had 1.7 something. I mean, 20 miles of difference, and it could have made a huge difference where that was placed. But I was looking at the annual exceedance probabilities, and somebody's going to have to explain a 1,000-year flood better than I do. I'm really bad at it. But for anybody who's watching it online, we got into the 500 to 1,000-year flood recurrence in the high mountains in Greenbrier and Pocahontas County, but it drained out of Pocahontas, and that's when you have to know your basins. And if I can offer any advice to anybody who wants to get into meteorology, you got to know your basins as well as your highways and your towns and whatnot. And when you deal with as many basins, I don't know nearly as many basins as Mike does, but we have thousands of little mini basins that feed in, so the streams and creeks, and the hydro people will tell you there's some creeks that are called 3 different names in a county too, so that becomes a problem. But this has happened before, not this 1,000-year flood, but in the same spots, which is why it's very difficult for me, because I want to focus on moving ahead and fixing things and fixing the warning process to getting attention, but also then remediation. I mean, we got to talk about that at some point. It's maybe still too raw right now, but how do we move ahead, and how do we say, okay, well, who's got to move up? Who's got to move out? Where do we put this stuff? Because, if it happened 20 years ago and now we're fixing it again in the same spots, we got to have that conversation. It's raw. It's very emotional right now with a lot of people, and I don't want to push the needle too far, but at some point we're going to have to step back and say, okay, what can we do? There are some people that are taking a buyout right now, and a little bit of that conversation is going on. But when you live in hills and valleys, there's not a lot of places to go. I mean, that's family land. That's been passed down for generations. Just because it didn't happen before, as Morgan was saying, doesn't mean it won't happen, and we saw it happen.
So Spencer, talk for a moment about the circumstances of many of the deaths. I mean, you may not know all of them, but with 23, were they in their homes? Were they in their cars? What was the majority?
The few that I know of, there were some in their homes, and I can tell you I have a survivor story, actually, and I'll let Mike address more about the deaths because he probably has had more contact. We have not had the entire list of names yet either, which is interesting. Already a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. But we have an intern here named Joseph Fitzwater, who himself actually has meteorology in his background training. He's been working the news desk because I've been trying to get him on into the weather thing. But he goes home about an hour away into Clay County, and he says, I go to sleep, and I wake up, and next thing I know, water's filling up my house, and it's getting higher than we've ever seen it before, and we know it's getting into the foundation, it's coming up. So he literally has to grab his folks and go up the mountain, and he was completely flooded out. They lost everything, and they spent the night on the mountain up behind the house. And the guy, God love him, he calls me and he says on Friday, this is the day after, he says, hey, I'm sorry I can't make it to work today. I'm really sorry, but I got a really good excuse. And I said, yes, you do. You don't have to worry about being to work, okay? So we got him back in here, and just the greatest attitude, but he was telling us the story about he had to literally take his family and go up the hill and try and knock down the trees and the weeds and everything and go on up the mountain here behind the house just to survive. And so I know people literally passed away in their homes hoping somebody was coming, and it just didn't happen. I don't know how many of that, but vehicles too. I'm sure there were some vehicle issues because they just got washed away down the creek. Mike, maybe you know more about the particulars of the deaths that happened.
Yeah, we keep track of those kind of things, of course, because we gotta collect report. I can speak for RCWA in Kanawha County, which is where Charleston is, fairly populated county. There were 6 deaths in Clendenin, which is the town along the Elk River where the highest rises were. There was a middle-aged female found in her car after the floodwaters receded. A couple people were found I got one here, unknown age, found in the Jordan Creek area. So this was, outside of a vehicle, just got washed down. We had an electrocution death as well. You could certainly imagine how that might happen. And there was also, unfortunately, a death in Jackson County. A 4-year-old boy was near the floodwaters and was swept away. And he was not recovered. The body wasn't recovered until the day after. So we do have some details on how it happened like that, and they're all really unfortunate when you hear things like that because sometimes you can't prevent it from happening. If you really do have a wall of water situation where it's blasting down a river valley. But some of these deaths, you hear a kid playing by the river. I mean, you can prevent that. You can easily prevent that. Electrocution. That's something that I think people maybe forget about. I know we haven't. I don't know if we've even discussed that idea in warnings, even in outreach events or things like that. But of course, if you have power lines down and perhaps from the earlier morning thunderstorms, that may be something that's mentioning now and again here when we have floodwaters, is that you could, in addition to maybe getting swept away in your vehicle, you could get electrocuted. So there's definitely a lot of lessons to be learned from some of the information that we're finding out about how these people unfortunately lost their lives.
Flood water ain't exactly pool water either. There's all manner of stuff. If you're lucky, it's just debris. If you're unlucky, it might be all the critters that have been flushed out of their homes, some of which think human flesh is pretty tasty.
No. Yep.
Well, and there's things that will go down the line, too. The death toll may not be finished yet because of exactly what you're talking about, Nate. We don't know some of the things that just go down the road that proceed after this. So we're not really sure, but we have our eyes and ears open for, and that just tears you up when that happens.
One of the things we hear about, too, through our EMs, we hear a lot about how the counties are ordering a lot of lime right now. We were doing briefings for our EMs after the event, and they kept on asking, well, are we going to get more rain? Are we going to get more rain? Because they were concerned about what had happened is you get all that silt and all that dirt that runs off the side of the mountains, and it's not just pushing the water and the tree branches and the pieces of house debris up against the rivers, the edges after it's done. That stuff is also caked in mud. It's caked in oftentimes feet of mud, and you get that wet, sopping mud drying. You get a lot of mosquito problems potentially, so they're really concerned about trying to reduce any sort of disease spreading with mosquitoes, getting the lime out there. There's a whole lot of different factors that go into the cleanup afterwards.
So it seems to me this is one of those wall of water type flood events. You go back to Big Thompson Canyon in Colorado in 1976. We're going to be there Sunday. I'm going to be interested to drive through that canyon, and they got hit by a similar type flood again in 2013, I believe. But it seems to me increasingly, and I'll let all of our meteorologists that want to comment on this. It seems like people just radically, and maybe not in this situation, but radically ignore the turn around, don't drown advice. That seems like really simple advice. Nate Johnson, what can you say about that?
We can step back and look at that and go, well, geez, why did this person do this? That seems silly. But then, I was reminded today that the older I get, the more gray I see, and I'm not just talking about what little hair I have left. If you're a mom and it's 5:45 and you got to pick the kids up by 6 from the daycare, and the daycare, if you've ever had kids in daycare, you pick them up late and it's like dollars per minute after the deadline, and maybe you're having a hard enough time making ends meet as it is, and you're thinking, well, geez, I saw that car ahead of me go across, so I'm just going to go across with it, and in the intervening time the road is washed out, just like the picture that Morgan showed of Highway 6 there in Cisco. It's never black and white. People make value judgments, and weather is only one input out of many, dozens in some cases, into that decision-making process. And Mark Fox, if you follow, there's a blog called The Weather Social, and Mark Fox, who is a meteorologist with the Fort Worth Weather Service office, had a fantastic blog post today talking about how a lot of times meteorologists are like the crowd at a Little League game shouting to the outfielder who's got the ball and doesn't know really what to do with it, and everybody's shouting different things, and we don't know what the kid's hearing. Same thing. We got a lot of folks talking about what to do, and sometimes that advice is conflicting. Sometimes it's just not coming at the exact same time from different folks, and it's confusing. And again, they're only one input. The weather enterprise as a whole is only one input into those decisions. It's very tough. It seems obvious to us because we, as I tell my students, we swim in that ocean. But for folks who don't, who have other priorities, who have other things, that have lives they want to live, the latest slogan from the federal government ain't exactly high on their list of things they care about at that moment.
Well, something that we have out here that's fairly, well, uncommon to other parts of the country, we do hold tsunami drills along the coast, especially Grays Harbor County and some of the counties that have some very low-lying areas where a lot of people live. And Lahar sirens downstream from Mount Rainier. If a Lahar goes from Rainier, there will be cities of Ording, possibly even Puyallup. These are significant areas that will be overrun. So once a month, the siren goes off, and essentially people are told to run for the hills, run for the high ground. They're told exactly where to go. Maybe we ought to have sirens and carefully spelled out plans of this is the highest point on the ridge near your house, and when the siren goes off or when the weather radio goes off, you don't wait. You get to high ground. And maybe it sounds a little simple, but run for the hills is something that you would shout to your neighbor if they were in a situation and a wall of water was coming at them. It's just a thought, because we do have that mindset up here, even though that's, for a lot of people up here, it's never going to happen in their lifetimes.
I think you just hit something. It's never happened before. I've never seen it, and it's a confirmation bias thing. I have to see it before I'm going to move feet up the hill. But that's one thing I've been saying, Morgan, is like, don't wait for me to get on and give a warning. If the water's coming up near you, get up the hill. And, I think we're going to find out it was vehicles here, and probably in particular people who maybe had disabilities or were elderly and could not physically get out. That's what we're going to find out. The biggest thing I would just say is you don't know what's under the water, and I think that in Texas we've seen that, in Tennessee we've seen that, places where you see the video where the truck tries to go across there and then the road's gone. So that's the biggest thing. Don't trust what you see, because there may not be anything underneath to see. It might be a hole, and then just terrible things could happen.
Now, Morgan, you had a great question for the meteorologist in Alabama after the 2011 outbreak concerning complacency. Why don't you ask that to James?
Yeah, I wanted to get James back on here, and you and Brian can also comment about it, and other people have been through significant tornado events. When does the complacency stop? Because we've been, we're 5 years plus now since Tuscaloosa and those horrible events. Has the complacency come back yet, or was it so bad that it still hasn't worn off yet? Because I think after Katrina, everyone was on edge. I think that's worn off too.
Mm-hmm.
Brian? No, I you know me, I'm a loudmouth. I have things to say, but you go first. I'll answer the question.
Honestly, Morgan, I can say that in my talking to groups and what kind of outreach work, I don't think it's worn off quite as fast as I've seen other big events wear off. I mean, this was the hugest of magnitudes, so I don't know. It seems like people are still talking about it. So I don't think it's worn off quite as much.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. I'm shocked. Let me give you an example. We had an EF5 tornado here in 1998, April 8th, 1998. Horrible EF5. I mean, just big, bad, nasty. 34 people died. And I would say, but that was basically it. There was one. And after that, I would say the complacency was back within 3 years. Even agree. For people that live close to that area, 3 years. So here we are 5 years after this generational thing, and I don't think it's worn off. I think there is a very high awareness, which is very surprising to me. But I think, like Brian says, it was the magnitude of the event. You didn't have one, you had 60 tornadoes. And instead of 34 deaths, you had 252. It crossed every socioeconomic line. People that live in cities, people that live in rural areas, high income, low income, minorities, it doesn't matter. And so I don't know how long it's going to last, but I think we ought to take advantage of it. And I think to prove the point, Brian did spotter training for us this year. We went to, I think, 5 locations, and every venue was packed. And understand, when we do spotter training, we're not coming out there, doing a little show and making people laugh and putting on entertainment. This is teaching. This is like a classroom setting. And to see that kind of response 5 years out is encouraging to me. So 5 years out hasn't faded yet. I know it will, but so far it hasn't.
And could it also have helped that everybody saw this on live TV.
Oh,
I think, yeah, I think so. And the other thing we have now that we didn't have maybe everybody using is YouTube. And as crazy as it sounds, a lot of people will get on YouTube and watch these tornado videos. You know, videos that people shot on the street. You know, the television coverage. All that is out there for the world to see, and you can see that at any time. And I think that's also something we've not had in recent years. And it's very easy for people to cling to the memories when they see it so often.
So Aubrey, circle back to something you were talking about in chat there while your television station was in the show. Talk about the effect of that derecho wording and social media and the sort of preponderance that was out there in advance of the event in West Virginia. You think that might have had effect on people looking more to that than to the flooding?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and you got to think the derecho of 2012. We were 105 degrees that day. I was actually traveling from here to Pennsylvania, and the temperature dropped from 102 to 73. And that, so April 27, 28, 2011, we had 5 tornadoes in the Shenandoah Valley. One traveled 33 miles, and this is between midnight and 4 a.m. In the mountains of the Shenandoah Valley. To me, that's unprecedented, but people forget that. A lot of people don't remember that because not everyone was affected. People remember the derecho of 2012. It happened on a Friday night about 8 o'clock in the middle of summer on a hot day, and all of a sudden everyone was affected. So that is the stigma, is anytime, even just a weak complex, the night before we had a weak complex of storms come through, or not certainly strong, and people were flipping out because they thought it was another derecho. And the Facebook social meteorologists and a couple that I know who actually are meteorologists put that hype out there the 3 weeks before this event. Hey guys, there's going to be a derecho potential this weekend. And someone posted on our WHSV Facebook page when we were putting the alert out there about the potential for severe weather on a week before, and he said, why aren't you saying there's a possible derecho? And I said, do you have any idea what that word does to people? You have to remember that 2012 was a very, very unique event. And of course, we got an MCS coming through, and that morning, that first round of storms that happened that morning, I feel like that kept the severe threat in our area very low that afternoon because of the cloud cover. We actually had very little sunshine, if any, peek through, and that second complex of storms that happened that morning was the reason we had no sunshine. And I was about that line, that afternoon line, if I can say this, that was set up across Highland and Augusta County across our area, which we had a decent amount of flooding. And I was within about 10 minutes of sending out, notifications and going on air saying this is serious, because they were everything was back building, and that line just sank south and just 30 miles from our area. But a lot of people in our area, one, have gone to help, but two, also know have seen the 1985 flooding, and have seen what a lot of people still remember that, even though it was 30 years ago.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, let's pause here. And Aubrey, while you were here, if you don't mind, we might just have some email to read, so let's time and dig in the email basket here.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
I'm not prepared.
I know you're not, but
I'm
you're
not
here.
prepared.
But that's a good song. It's got a beat. You can dance to it.
Play it again.
I tell you what, while you're stalling.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
We're going to do a weather roundup and give Aubrey 2 minutes here to stall and get the email ready. We're doing this out of order. But so let's see what's happening across the Great Fruited Plain. Kevin Selly, Wichita Falls, Texas, in July can be hot, but seems like it's not as bad as it could be.
It's actually worse in my opinion because we've been running dew points in the 70s. I've had 77 dew points a number of times here in Wichita Falls, which is just ridiculous and plain icky. A little cooler today because we had some showers, thunderstorms this morning, and so that kept the cloud cover around. But yeah, it's just hot and icky, and it's supposed to be a little drier here.
All right. Down here where we actually had some thunderstorms today in the deep south. Didn't rain everywhere, but you know how summer convection goes. In fact, we had a few spots in the northern part of my state with only upper 70s today, which is pretty remarkable for July. Morgan, what's happening in the great Pacific Northwest?
Well, last night we had our fireworks show, and we broadcast that, so that was a pretty significant undertaking last night, and it was a lot of fun. We have had some unusually cool weather. Looking back at last year, the 1st through the 5th of July, each one of those days touched 90 or hotter in Seattle, and we've gone from the lower to middle 70s, and today's high was, let me look at the update, I think it came in at 67. We should be in the mid-70s. We've had some incredible heat. In fact, we're running way above normal for this time in the year of how many 90-degree days we've had. We're at records for 90-degree days, 80-degree days, and 70-degree days so early in a year. And that came in April and early May. It looks like we'll turn around through the middle of the month with some troughing and systems coming down from Alaska, and then it's probably back to the fire, or at least our version of it.
All right, Spencer, what's happening in the eastern U.S.?
Well, I tell you, we've had those thunderstorms, tornadoes. It's not often that we have tornadoes on the 4th of July, but I have had that happen one other time, just not an EF2 that was actually seen, spotted, and created damage. So kind of glad that that's a pretty rare thing for us. Mike doesn't really know this, but I probably was responsible for canceling a lot of fireworks yesterday. Got a lot of mayors who like to call and see what's going on. It was just too lousy to do fireworks around here. So a lot of these got rescheduled for Labor Day around here. We're going to have great Labor Day fireworks. Come to West Virginia for those. It's going to be phenomenal. And we are expecting a big-time warm-up here, 90 by Friday, a couple of spotty showers and storms. We'll kind of watch out for that. I think Mike and I are going to be a little busy until about Friday and then a nice weekend.
Yeah, Friday looks like it might be a little entertaining around here in the afternoon, that's for sure.
Awesome. All right, Aubrey, are you ready?
I think so. Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, and you are on the air everywhere.
You ever feel like you just can't keep up?
It's my life.
Okay, so we'll go back a couple of emails, and I haven't gotten any recently, so I'm going to have to double check the inbox, and if I find any that I missed, I'll put them in for next week. Ken Hoagland sent us a book suggestion. Ken is an avid reader of Outside Magazine, and they just released suggested summer reads, and one caught his eye. It's a book called And Soon I Heard a Roaring Wind, A Natural History of Moving Air by Bill Strever. So that's pretty cool. I can, if you want, we can actually use the link for the book, and we can use it as my pick since I may or may not have put in one already this week. And Scott Courier, this is a good question. We've talked about this. Basically, his email says, "Are Mets still needed? Are meteorologists still needed?" We've talked about the change in news. We can make it brief, kind of commenting on it, but and Facebook now with their new algorithm to kind of not filter in news in your feed, your Facebook what do you call it, news feed and stuff. So Facebook might not be your prime source. Could that be a good thing for us?
Hey, what to get Kevin talking about the Facebook news feed? Just get him really cranky.
It would be. We did our tornado stuff live yesterday, and I was just looking at it. And for us, 22,000 views. People were watching that, and I had people say, "You know what? I was watching you guys on Facebook. My power went out, but my phone was still going. I was watching that." So that's that's our replay right there. We actually had 3 people in, and we did TV live, and we had somebody just shooting the whole thing on Facebook Live too and narrating. So it worked out good. I would say, yeah, we still need meteorologists.
And I like that, but my objection is that the television stations are not following up. I mean, we're pushing all this stuff and the responsibility over on Facebook, so we can't effectively monetize it. We're not doing our jobs. It's the same way we abandoned the web in the beginning when we ceded responsibility for the development of websites and whatnot to these templated World Now and I can't think of the other names, but we're just not recognizing the call to step up and lead instead of sitting around going, oh well, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't, and then 6, 7, 8 years later coming in behind. It's just not working.
Yeah. All right, that's a conversation that's going to continue. Scott Whitaker also sent in. He was curious.
There's a certain amount of disgust in your voice on that, I think.
No, I think I don't. I'm fascinated
offended.
with it. I wish I knew the answer. I want to have more discussions. I want to sit down with our web people, and I don't know that there is a right or wrong answer, but right now there is. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I have the answer. I have the answer. Sorry.
Solve that problem.
Social media.
That'll stop that conversation right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we also had an email. If more people die from floods than anything else, why did they not receive the attention? And most of us know that he is actually still the #1 killer. But flooding events, I don't know. Both of them can be prevented, and we talked about some of the flooding. One other thing in this area, kind of topping on what Nate was going off of, is we have a lot of low water bridges in this area, and that's how people get home. And sometimes at the end of the day, you just want to go home, and maybe not thinking that something could actually happen to you. So I think that could be a problem in this area also.
Yeah, that's common here. Just Appalachia, and basically holes, kind of swales that you have to drive through. And I got a big 4x4, and I can get through there because I've never seen it before.
Or I've done it the last time, and every time it rains, I can make it through. And I think that's one of the big things is for a lot of people to remember, even going back to the derecho, not every event is the same. Almost everything is going to happen, each storm chance that we have this week, everything's going to be different. A different area, it's not going to be the same. So I think that's a hard message to get across. And Scott, of course, reached out and sent us the guest suggestions about tonight's show topic, so we appreciate it. And then Jonathan Thompson, which I'm hoping is not the guy I went to school. I'm assuming this is not the guy I went to school with, because I went to school with a Jonathan Thompson. And I'm assuming Jonathan is probably not the same Jonathan Thompson. He sent us a Mother Goose about the high number of typhoons and about the Weather Channel being outsourced to India. So it's a funny cartoon about that. And then Susie Grant also just sent us an email, and I know this meteorologist, and I have a lot of respect for this meteorologist, but some of the interesting weathercasts that are going on. I'll use something different as an example. There's a lot of emoji casts going on out there. So those different, the frizz casts, and I give out the bear cast, but that's different, right?
Well, she just sent the sweat cast. Isn't that what she sent?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the sweat.
That's terrible.
What's the bear cast?
The bear cast is my dog Bear. She is a bit famous in this area.
Right.
So I use cutouts of her and her, what she thinks about the day. So
She's kind of a big deal.
she's a bigger deal than me and anyone else here at the station. People recognize her more. I get more phone calls on her than anything. So if you have an email for us, just send it to email@weatherbrains.com. We like your guest suggestions. Don't forget to send in some contact info with those guest suggestions and also your show suggestions. Of course, tonight's topic, prime example, so we appreciate that, and thank you all for sending in your emails.
Okay, so what's going to happen here? I'm going to roll WeatherBrains 101 and Tony Rice in the astronomy report featuring the golden pipes of Morgan Palmer. And after that, Bill, you'll have to kind of handle picks of the week here as we wrap things up. So much more to go as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
When describing the pressure patterns either at the surface or in the upper airflow, we use terms such as troughs and ridges. A trough is an elongated region of relatively low atmospheric pressure which is often associated with the presence of a front at the surface. A ridge, on the other hand, is an area of relatively high pressure. The weather pattern over the U.S. so far this summer has seen several occurrences of a trough over the eastern U.S., while a ridge over the western third of the country has produced some pretty spectacular heat. Sometimes the region between two high-pressure centers may assume the character of a trough when there is a detectable wind shift noted at the surface. In the absence of a wind shift, the region is often designated a col, akin to a geographic saddle between two mountain peaks. The height of a pressure surface is primarily a function of the average temperature of the air below that height surface. The density of air changes with temperature, so as the temperature of air cools, it becomes more dense and thus more compacted, taking up less volume. So as air cools, the height lowers as the air becomes more dense. Air will cool when it rises, thus a trough can be found where there is lifting of air. A trough can bring in cloudy conditions and precipitation, or they can bring in a cold air mass, or at least cool, especially when dealing with summertime conditions. An area with relatively higher heights or a deep warm air mass will both lead to ridging. Since air is often sinking within a ridge, they tend to bring warmer and drier weather. While troughs and ridges are analyzed on pressure surfaces aloft, the terminology is often applied to surface features too. Weather questions are always welcome at question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
A big challenge for any scientist is making sense of and communicating complex data. Data visualization is one way, but data like radio signals can benefit from something called data sonification, where data is turned into sound. Signal power is analogous to volume. Changing frequencies and wavelengths can be expressed in the changing pitch. The Juno spacecraft arrived in orbit on Monday and is currently in the process of powering up its instruments for 20 months' worth of long, sweeping science orbits. Last week, it crossed the boundary of Jupiter's immense magnetic field. The WAVE instrument on board recorded the encounter. The bow shock, where the supersonic solar winds are heated and slowed by Jupiter's magnetosphere, produced some distinctive whistling patterns. The following day, Juno passed into the magnetosphere. This isn't the first time that data from Jupiter has been sonified. Back in 1979, Voyager 1's plasma wave instrument recorded the crossing of that bow shock. Voyager also recorded some atmospheric effects, namely lightning in the upper atmosphere. As Juno begins those science orbits, much more will be revealed about Jupiter's atmosphere. Perhaps that data will sing to us a little more. Elsewhere in the sky, Monday also marked aphelion, or the point in Earth's orbit where it's furthest from the Sun. Spring also begins on Mars, in the southern hemisphere where the rovers are located. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
And we thank Tony Rice very much for the astronomy report. It's good to have you live on the show, Morgan, instead of just a recording. Kevin, go ahead.
I was going to say, Tony is on sound effects timeout for the next session.
I was going to say the magnetosphere sounds kind of like Brian Peters and Hurricane Ivan, I think.
Tony, love you, but you're in timeout.
Yeah, I thought my audio was going out there for a second. And speaking of audio going out, we've had Sheldon on the show, and we wanted to have you on here so badly, Sheldon. So lean in real close, let us see your nose hairs, and talk to me for a minute about the Shady Side, Ohio flood, because it seems like it has a lot of similarities here.
Yes, Bill, there's a very similar similarities. Same type of moisture that came out of Mexico and the intertropical convergence zone that came into the Midwest and the Ohio Valley that preceded the various short waves, upper level disturbances in the atmosphere that came across Ohio that day. And very similar to the flood in West Virginia, that flood, that area had never had a catastrophic flood like they had there. And there were over 20 people who were killed that day in Shadyside.
Yeah. I remember, I didn't remember that actual event, but this event will go down in history as being just as serious and probably just as remembered.
Yes, and I have up, I'm not sure whether anybody can see it, have up very similar patterns to the Shadyside. On the left-hand side is a water vapor picture preceding the Shadyside flood, and on the right-hand side is the water vapor for the preceding of the West Virginia flood. So you can see kind of a very similar pattern in the way of the mid and high level moisture that led up to both the floods.
Yeah, very, very amazing to see the similarities. We're glad you're with us tonight, though, Sheldon, and we'll get back and get your pick in a minute now that we've reestablished audio contact with you. So, Morgan, you had a landslide story you wanted to tell, and not a political landslide story.
Right, yeah. We were talking about the different types of hazards around flooding, and back in 2014, we had an incredible landslide in Oso, Washington. It was a Saturday morning in March. Nobody who worked here, especially those who went out to the site, will ever forget it. Killed 43 people, and it was 1 square mile gave way. And as we were discussing the situation with people rebuilding and FEMA coming in, and there are probably just some places where the danger, especially if something has happened before, and these folks did not clearly have the full picture of what was possibly going to happen there if we had a lot of rainfall, and perhaps that's a good thing to consider as what could happen, and that goes along the same lines as a bit earlier. I did want to point out my pick of the week real fast, and this is on the USGS Water Science School website, and it's a rainfall calculator, and it says how much water will fall during a storm. You can put in a square footage, or 6 feet by 10 feet, how many acres or how many square miles, and have the computer simulate an inch of rain. It will tell you exactly how much water fell, and that's a pretty cool tool, especially for kids and science projects and that sort of thing. But it's the USGS rainfall calculator.
Billions and billions.
Billions.
So it's good to have you on the show tonight, Morgan. Thank you for leading off the picks there. That's perfect timing. Brian Peters, how about you? You have a pick for us.
I have to have my pick go before Nate, although I think Nate has had to drop out, but ran across a very interesting picture of a thunderstorm that shows some of the power and the majesty of nature. So it's a long link. It comes from the Capital Weather Gang. And then since Nate is not here, I'll mention that his pick is also a follow-up to that. It's the science behind that awesome thunderstorm photo. So very interesting.
A 1-2 punch of picks of the week. Thank you very much, Brian and Nate. Mike Charnick, nice to have you on the show tonight under bad circumstances, but we've enjoyed having your presence here. Did you come up with a pick of the week, sir?
Yeah, I do actually have a pick. I don't know if I can share my screen here and show you a slide.
Yeah, click up there in the top left corner on the little green icon, and that'll help you screen share right there.
Start screen share. All right.
A picture of me. That's nice.
How about, can you see this slide here that has a map of West Virginia?
There you go.
There it is. Yeah. We were talking about that 1,000-year rainfall return. One of our really good GIS forecasters here, Nick Webb, put this together. It sort of shows what the 1,000-year rainfall return, 1,000-year rainfall values are across West Virginia. Not unexpectedly, across the mountains, the higher terrain, you're seeing those 9 to almost 10 inches of rain would be a 24-hour 1,000-year rainfall. And now if you look over here in Nicholas, Clay County, you sort of see this red contoured area. These are the areas that, based on our radar estimates and some gauge readings, this is the area that likely exceeded that 1,000-year rainfall. Again, the 1,000-year rainfall, as we sort of talked about earlier, it's 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 not necessarily saying this will occur at once every 1,000 years. It's on average over a very long period of record. This is about the return rate of an event like this. So you could see just some of these communities: Clendenin, Ansted, Grinnell, White Sulphur Springs, an event that will very likely not be exceeded in the living memory of people that are currently out there right now. So I think that was pretty interesting to me.
Well, let's hope that won't happen, but it could happen again this year, unfortunately.
Indeed.
And our West Virginia friends, I guess the PGA tournament actually was canceled at the Greenbrier?
Yeah,
Unfortunately, yep.
Yeah, they canceled that one. That just not going to happen, and that golf course completely trashed. Bubba Watson actually lives there, pro golfer, Masters two-time champion, I believe, and but he lives there, has a house there, and he's graciously donated $250,000 to recovery. But he went out, and you could tell he kind of started with a lighthearted, like, oh, that's going to be a little bad on the golf course, and then it got so bad. But he actually raised a lot of awareness by his tweet to how bad things were when he went over to the golf course. So very unique to see a professional athlete step in and help raise that awareness that quickly.
Wow. So, Spencer, we'll stay with you for a second. Have you had time to think of a pick of the week? I like the one you put in chat just fine, but I think that the rest of my football friends will probably disagree with it.
Well, I'll try and whiz through them quick because, they all came to mind. One, I got to go with Nick Saban because he's a West Virginia native. He's a West Virginia native.
Very appropriate.
He actually came on our broadcast. He Skyped with us because he knew about the need here, and he really gave us – it was a football pep talk, but I got to tell you, it was one of the best I've ever heard in his low-key manner about we got to keep focusing forward and move ahead. And with that, our partners are the Mountain Mission. Look for mountainmission.com. They're going to get food and help and cleaning supplies out to the people out there, and it's as simple as going to their website. Thank you for giving me the chance to raise a little awareness on that. And one last shout-out to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for their naming conventions on the dams and the locks around here, because generally they are named after the town closest to the dam. Well, the Summersville Dam is the name of it. That's not the closest town. The closest town was the community of Gad, G-A-D, and they actually flooded that out when they built this. So they decided, you know what, we can't have that, and we're going to call it the Summersville Dam instead of naming it after Gad. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you to the Corps of Engineers for saving broadcasters fines for generations to come.
Spencer, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's outstanding. And Spencer, we'll circle back around to you, Sheldon, for a second and see if you've come up with a pick of the week.
I have a satellite pick of the week. That's updated every hour, shows you where the highest moisture is and where there could be some heavy rainfall across the United States and around the world.
Well, we got that pick of the week, and it'll be on the website along with all the others.
I didn't get it, Bill.
Well, Sheldon, make sure you send me or Brian your pick of the week, because we want to get that out to the world. I think you've made Brian. I think you made James Spann a believer in precipitable water in the last few weeks since you've been writing on our blog, because he's used it heavily this summer.
And he's the one to listen about it too.
So it's been nice having you on the show tonight, Sheldon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks.
I'm gonna ask for executive privilege, Brian Peters, on the foghorn because of these great guests that we were able to arrange tonight.
Yeah, you don't have the foghorn from me, that's for sure.
Next week we'll have Kevin Kleesel from the University of Oklahoma. You'll have to be in charge of that show, Brian Peters, because I'll be in Colorado. So somebody will have to take over that show, but it'll be a great one. Kevin's a great guest, of course. Trevor Boucher from the National Weather Association will join us on the 18th. And Aubrey's arranged for the folks at Virginia Tech to come on and talk about their Tornado Cube on the 25th. We'll move over to Martin Licious on August 1st. We'll have the Capital Weather Gang's Angela Fritz on August the 8th, and Charlie Woodrum talking about football and lightning and large venue safety as we move toward the 15th. And finally, we'll go toward the end of August with FedEx and Jeremy Scott Smith talking about what they do for weather here on WeatherBrains. So, is there any further business, Brian Peters?
Not that I can think of.
Well, I would entertain a motion that we adjourn then.
Absolutely. Let the gavel fall where it may.
Weather Brains, of course, is the weekly netcast that's all about weather. We generally do it here on Monday nights, except in and around holidays, and whenever James Spann chooses to take vacation. But we generally record at 8:30 Central Time on Monday nights. You can find us on BigBrainsMedia.com. That's where you can find us live. You can find us in lots of other places like iTunes, After the Fact, Google+, YouTube. You can also find us on my favorite website, AlabamaWX.com. All those different methods. But we appreciate each and every one of you who've been listening for nearly 11 years now. That still amazes me. Send your questions, comments, likes, rants, all those things to email@weatherbrains.com, and Aubrey will make sure that we read those once every 5 or 6 weeks. And until we get back together again a week from last night, next Monday night, I'm Bill Murray. Have a great week, and God bless.
Right.
All right, good show. Thank you very much, Spencer.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Sheldon, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Good to see you, everybody.
All right, Morgan, you have an option to renew your contract for one more week. Do you choose to
I'll be here
renew
next
it,
Monday.
or are you going to go ahead and bug out now?
No, I'll be here next Monday. Nate contacted me about the Monday after that, and I might have a connection problem, but we can test it out because I'll be out of town for, I think that's the 18th, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I liked your story about the Lahar sirens south of Rainier. That has always fascinated me, my trip to Rainier, and understanding what sort of effect that volcano will have if it ever blows.
Right. There's a sediment from previous eruptions of Rainier running all the way into the Duwamish Waterway in South Seattle. That's part of Puget Sound. So it's happened before. And people's homes are built on old Lahar deposits all over the place.
Yeah, there's your Black Swan event right there. All right, Morgan, thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Y'all have a good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
All right, guys. That's a wrap for this week on WeatherBrains. Thank you all for watching. We're in the middle of the newscast here. If you're watching this live, we'll be over on Song of the Night on my Twitter feed shortly. Join us for the fun and foolishness there. We'll see you guys next week. I'll be back on Monday night next week. So thank you all for watching. Have a great week. God bless, and bye-bye.